understand at some sort of superficial level that this person is going through what could be construed as an emotion by other people, but I don't understand what it is. This is a psychopath's position. Would a company or a corporation actually lack empathy? Well, maybe by definition they would have to. If you're concerned about the fate of your competitors and also the general public, you may not have profits that are so respectable. Lacks remorse is another characteristic that defines psychopathy. That is, having done something, you don't feel badly about it. Corporation, I imagine, would be much the same, unless one is caught. Now, a psychopath who is caught for committing a crime, the first thing he'll say is, yeah, I'm really sorry I did it, I feel remorse, but only when caught. And I imagine that most corporations would be much the same. If some sort of regulatory body finds out what you're doing, and if it's considered to be illegal, I would imagine that they would say, well, yes, we're really sorry, but otherwise they're not likely to do that. Psychopath doesn't accept responsibility for his or her own behavior. Usually diffusion of responsibility is the name of the game for the psychopath. Somebody else maybe do it. It wasn't my fault, it was fate, and I'm not really responsible. Corporations would do this almost routinely, I would imagine. In fact, they would have public relations personnel whose only job is to make sure that this image is portrayed to the general public as, yes, somebody else, it was fate, it was a political decision, or it wasn't the market suddenly crashed and there was a war in some other place and this accounted for everything. Psychopaths tend to be impulsive, but in a fairly controlled sense. That is, most psychopaths are not going to do things if there's an external control present. The psychopath standing on the street corner is not going to commit a crime with the policeman standing right next to him. On the other hand, if the policeman is not there, if the external control is not there, then it's possible that he or she will do whatever he feels like doing if he has a chance of getting away with it. Are corporations impulsive? It's difficult to actually evaluate this, but I would imagine so in some cases, particularly if the corporation is not well structured, if the rules of behavior and the hierarchical structure is not firmly in place, then it would be very possible for a corporation to act impulsively. Of course, if you do this, then you run the risk of actually, experiencing fairly serious losses. Psychopaths don't have long-term goals. Most of the things that they're striving for are short-term, and could refer to as a short-term form of hedonism. And corporations, I imagine, are much the same way. In fact, one could argue that sacrificing short-term profits for the long-term potential of making profits would not be in the company's best interest. So almost by their very nature, they would have to lack long-term goals. Now, some corporations, of course, would have a long-term strategy, but at the same time, they'd have these short-term goals that are firmly in place. They've got to go to the next stockholders meeting, for example, and show that there's a profit. Psychopaths tend to be irresponsible. And that means that their behavior doesn't take into account what's likely to happen to somebody else. Their own behavior puts other people at risk all the time. This could be in driving, it could be in personal relations, or anything they do in their general life. And corporations, I imagine, could be irresponsible in exactly the same way. That is, in an attempt to satisfy the corporate goal, everybody else is put at risk. This could be other companies. As a matter of fact, I suppose one could argue that this is good in the business sense. I mean, if your competitors fall by the wayside because you are acting irresponsibly with respect to them, that's good, as long as you get some sort of goal out of that, some sort of benefit. Psychopaths also tend to engage in behavior that is antisocial or at least asocial from a very early age, and this continues on throughout most of the lifespan. And by this I mean their behavior is not necessarily criminal in the strict sense of the term, but in fact it's harmful to other people, other individuals. May not take into account the fact that your behavior is going to have negative consequences for somebody else. Corporation could be much the same, and this ties in with irresponsibility to a certain extent, that what they're doing with respect to the general public and to other companies would clearly be looked at, viewed as, or construed as asocial or antisocial. We just don't really care.
I was wondering what workable scheme you would put in its place.
Me?
Or
well, what I would,
what would you suggest to others who might be in a position to set it up and get it going?
Well, I mean, I think that what used to be called centuries ago wage slavery is intolerable. I mean, I don't think people ought to be forced to rent themselves in order to survive. I think that the economic institutions ought to be run democratically by their participants, by the communities in which they exist, and so on. And I think basically through various kinds of free association.
I'd like to see a gigantic project of dismantling and just getting rid of all this stuff that rests on the destruction of nature, that separates us from the natural world, that has people on this treadmill to constantly work and constantly consume. It's madness. It's destroying everything, and it just has to go.
Here, the question of how much of our modern industrial society needs to go arises. Obviously, people should be free to choose less technological ways of living, but let's recall that science, technology, and intellect have not been devoted to stopping the destruction of nature, to enhancing workers' self-management, or to overcoming the onerous and self-destructive character of the work of society. It has always been assumed that nature and people are just there to be exploited for the benefit of elites, and it's always been assumed that there is a substantial body of wage slaves who will do it simply because otherwise they'll starve. However, if human intelligence were devoted to asking how technology can be designed to fit the needs of the human producer and of the ecosystem, instead of that of the profiteers, technology would not seem so negative. And if human intelligence is turned to the question of how to make the necessary work of the society itself meaningful, the results could be surprising. For example, much of the necessary work could be consigned to machines, which means that humans can have more leisure time or can undertake creative and interesting work involving intelligence, skill, human relations, and service to the community. The task of technicians in this system of participatory councils would be to produce plans in the same way as industries produce refrigerators or stoves. That is, to explain to the people who are affected that if you decide this, you're likely to get this or that consequence. There is, however, one impediment that we need to struggle against if we wish to avert self-destruction. That's the authoritarian and materialistic tendencies of our society.
If my sense of identity is based on what I have, on my possessions, if I can say I am what I have, then the question arises, what am I if I lose what I have? Therefore, the sense of identity based on what I have is always threatened. A person is anxiously concerned or not to lose what he has, because he doesn't lose just what he has, he loses his sense of self. That sense of identity, which is based on to be, is entirely different, because that can never be taken away from me except if I'm insane or in some peculiar circumstances. I feel, I see, I love, I am sad. The less you are and the less you express your life, the more you have and the greater is your alienated life. Everything the economist takes from you in the way of life and humanity, he restores to you in form of money and wealth.
God damn it, an entire generation pumping gas, waiting tables, slaves with white collars. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need.
All 4,600 million years of evolution, it's packed, sealed, tagged, valued, and available off the rack. No returns.
Now, capital is debt. It's amassed wealth, which then can be used for certain purposes. Labor is a life. What is superior, things or life?
Death! 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 Death!
You see? It is the will of the people. The will of your slaves and parasites. How dare you speak of justice?
For 50 years we've told them what to eat, what to drink, what to wear. For Christ's sake, Ben, don't you understand? Americans love television. They wean their kids on it. Listen, they love game shows. They love wrestling. They love sports, violence. So what do? We give them what they want.
We cannot let the terrorists achieve the objective of frightening our nation to the point where people don't shop. Where people don't shop.
What do you find more satisfying, working or shopping?
Shopping.
Thank you.
You? Shopping.
I see, look at all those bags.
Definitely shopping.
People don't shop. We cannot let the terrorists achieve.
What do you find more satisfying, working or shopping?
Shopping.
Of
course.
Shopping. Oh, that's a difficult one. Shopping.
9 years of shopping.
People don't shop.
Shopping, definitely. Work sucks.
Can I ask you a quick question for school?
Frightening our nation.
What do you find more satisfying, working or shopping?
You know shopping, of course. You know that.
Shopping.
Shopping, without doubt. That's an easy question.
Shopping, of course.
Shopping, definitely.
Absolutely, shopping.
Shopping. Shopping.
Shopping. Shopping.
Shopping.
Shopping. Shopping.
Shopping. Shopping. Shopping. Shopping. Shopping. Shopping.